This video is going to help you if you have a hard time speaking your truth because you're afraid of blowback, being canceled, what other people are going to think about you. In this video, I'm going to be covering a few different things. One, what happens when we don't speak our truth? What happens when we actually start to heal as far as how the people around us respond? Why it's good if people are actually mad at us. So stay tuned. My name is Adam. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm a divine freedom and clarity coach. Before we get started, I just want to let you know I'm doing free breakthrough calls. These are really great 30-minute calls where we will go over your vision for your life, what's stopping you, and some steps you can take to really step into your light and into your power. Now let's begin. So, being authentic is the most important thing we can do for ourselves. Ultimately, the goal in life is to be your true self in an embodied form, whatever that means. Hopefully for you, it doesn't mean being a mass murderer, but anything short of that, it's kind of like you just got to let the chips fall where they may and connect to your own inner truth. And everyone around you, all the pushback is really just, it's like a weight to lift for your authentic self to come through and to shine. Now, for so many years, I've been afraid to speak up at all, to state my truth, to speak in front of groups of people, to share my message. Even now, doing this on YouTube, I'm holding back a lot. And one of the cool things is I get a lot of compliments and I'm very grateful for them about how I'm raw and I'm authentic and I'm just kind of me. And inside I'm like, well, sort of. There's a lot that I'm not letting out yet, and I will as I get more comfortable. One of the things I noticed, though, is that this is an incredibly universal fear. The fear of just speaking your truth. And the speaking of your truth involves really what's underneath that, which is the expression of your entire self, the integration of all the different parts of you, dark, light, all of it. And it can be very difficult when so many people around you have particular points of view or perspectives. And we grow up and we're developed and programmed through such judgment, such condemnation, so much shame, blame, and guilt, because that's what our whole society is based around. The cancel culture, lots of religions, lots of ideologies are all centered around kind of victimizing, shaming, and bringing people down, controlling them, making them afraid to really stand up and be themselves. And I'll go into this in some other video, how I can actually boil down almost every collective ideology to about the same belief system, which is you're a worthless piece of shit because you're a human being, so shut up and do what you're told. That's pretty much underneath everything. Anyway, what I noticed when I've kind of noticed this my whole life, but particularly when I was in rehab, was when any group of people think a particular thing and you think something different, it will automatically make you feel wrong. And especially if you're empathic and you can sense the energy in the room. And the reason for this is because on some level, there is no objective truth. Everything is a relative truth. We live in a collective consensus on a quantum level. I've talked about this before. I truly believe that if every single, or not every single, but enough human beings really deeply believed we could fly, we would all be flying, because that is how fucking weird quantum mechanics is and how the basis of our reality is structured. Okay, so the consensus dictates our reality. And one of the things that we're all doing by kind of doing the inner work and healing and, empaths and light workers and self-development culture, kind of facing our wounds, facing our shit and transforming it, is when we do that internally, we then ripple that out into the collective, and the collective consensus begins to heal and rise as well. But my point is, if the collective consensus that's relative to you, meaning your family, meaning your job, meaning whatever group you're part of, thinks something different than you, it's going to be very difficult for you to state your truth without feeling judged, shamed, or wrong. Now back to my point, when I was in rehab, the owner of the rehab was awesome. I loved him. He was great, but he was very used to being the one in charge. He dealt primarily with newcomers who who are newly sober. And when you're newly sober, you're not in the greatest state. You know, you have a lot of shame, you have a lot of doubt. You were probably pretty sleazy for a while. You maybe didn't really tell the truth a lot of times. So he was used to just being like, this is how it is. You're a fucked up drug addict. You need to listen to me. It's my way or you're wrong. And what would happen is as people recovered more and they had 6 months of sobriety or a year of sobriety, they would start to think for themselves, which is a good thing. You know, if you're an addict and you're running around for 10 years thinking that every time you think for yourself, it's your disease, you might want to question that. For the first few months, okay, but eventually you do want to think for yourself. Anytime people would start thinking for themselves, there'd be sort of a rub if you didn't agree with him, because he was a very strong personality and he had very strong ideas about what was right and wrong. And what would happen is, because our whole universe was this rehab, it was this group, pretty much everyone would agree with whatever he thought, because if they didn't, they would be in trouble. And I'm sure you can relate to this in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, maybe you have a boss who's just used to being in charge, or a father who's used to being in charge. And the group will inherit the belief structure of the one in charge, basically out of fear that they will get in trouble if they don't go along. And that is what happened in this rehab. If people didn't go along, they would get in trouble. So what would happen is, anytime he would come into a group with like, this is how it is for you, or this is what I see, everyone else would go along. And I would feel this almost field of energy of like, this is the truth. So anytime I would go to say like, oh, I don't agree with this, even if it was just about myself and what was going on inside of me, I would feel completely incorrect. It would just feel that way, because I had a small field of energy going up against a much larger field of energy that just is like, this is the truth. And that's kind of one of the things with the media is people think they know what's going on because they hear the same thing from 1,000 different sources. That's not really 1,000 different sources. It's just the same source from 1,000 different angles. And so there's this field of energy that states this is the truth, but it's not. It's just a relative truth or a story or whatever you want to call it. So what happens when we don't speak our truth? What happens when we give in to this fear and we suppress our voice? Everything in the world. You get sick, you get stuck, you can't move, you get stuck in jobs you hate, you withhold your gifts, you withhold your light, you don't take risks, you don't take the steps forward into the vision of the life that you want to create because you're afraid of judgment and criticism. Your nervous system gets all out of whack. You develop ailments. You develop illnesses, all because there's a light or a truth or an authentic voice within you that wants to come out. It wants to come out, and you're afraid, sometimes because the environment you're in doesn't agree with it. Sometimes you're just afraid it won't, and so you hold it back. So think about like turning on a fire hose and then pinching it off. Like there's all this force that wants to come through the hose. What happens when you put a kink in it? There's a blowback. So you're instead of facing the blowback externally from people not agreeing with you, when you suppress your voice or your truth, the blowback goes into your own body, and then it wreaks havoc in your life. So it's very important to basically just say what you need to say and deal with the consequences to some extent. What happens when we actually start to heal as far as to the people around us? Well, when we start to heal, what can happen is our vibration begins to raise. Our truth starts to come to light. And the people around us, if they don't have our best interest at heart, or they're just kind of programmed and they have trauma, because some families, some parents, like they're in some trauma and they're somewhat controlling, but it's not really because they hate, you or whatever. When we begin to heal, sometimes the environment can get worse because people actually sense us shifting. They sense us like stepping out of that role of being programmed and being controllable, and their egos get shaken up. And so because they're used to having control over you and they feel you starting to leave, or starting to like let go of that or pull back, they will kind of lash out more. And a lot of times when this happens, people can doubt the healing process, or they get discouraged, or they feel like they're doing the wrong thing. It's actually because you're doing the right thing that these things begin to happen. And if you stay with it, either what will happen is you will just get strong enough to leave this group, or the group eventually will kind of accept your new self, and they may, like if they're open enough, they may start to shift and heal too. But it's so important to understand that this is part of the process, and what you want to be doing is committing even more to healing, and also knowing that it's a sign that you're on the right track, not the wrong one. Finally, why is it good? Why is it good if people are mad at us? Well, it's good because you're being you. If it's because you're being authentic, if it's because you're speaking your truth, they're mad at you because they can't handle that. Because it scares them. It scares them to shed their programming and their trauma and to be their true self. And so when you do it, it's rattling their trauma. It actually has nothing to do with you. It has to do with their own fear of like taking that leap into the void, taking a risk, going out of their comfort zone, and loving themselves enough to let themselves be who they truly are. They're seeing you do it, they can't handle it, they get mad. That's where the haters come from. I've had some haters on Instagram, and I was just curious to kind of look at like, who are these people? So I would click on their accounts, and so far every single hater I've had on Instagram, you know how many fucking posts they have? None. They don't post anything because they're too scared to do it themselves. That's why they go around and pick at everybody else, so they don't have to face their own fear. The other reason it's good if people are mad at you is because when you're people pleasing all the time, when you're just nice to everybody and everyone likes you, they actually don't really like you because they don't know who you are. They like the conformed version because you're becoming who you think they want you to be. You're basically selling yourself out, not to even get them to like you because they don't like you, just to get them to not be mad at you for being your truthful best self. So when you break through that programming and you're like, I don't care anymore, and it pisses people off, that's an amazing sign that you are becoming your highest and best and most authentic self. And what you're also doing is you're giving them an opportunity to heal by triggering them. When you trigger them, you're shaking up their wounding and their trauma. They then have the choice to look at like, oh, why am I reacting this way? And heal it like you're doing, or to just stay in the projection and the shame and the blame and the guilt. It's not your business whether or not they take the opportunity or not, but you are giving them that opportunity, and it is a gift whether they're aware of it or not. Please let me know if you have any questions about this, any concerns, any revelations. Please leave the comments below. I have a free energy clearing. It's in the description. If you want to download it, it will help you clear some of these traumas and fears around stepping into your truth and speaking your true voice. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Other than that, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next time, and peace.